Hello, this is Joy Hancox again, and to take you further along the road of my journey. I'm going to begin today by quoting a philosophical saying that was printed at the beginning of the Byrom collection, my first published book. Whatever deserves to exist deserves to be known, for knowledge is the mirror of existence. And who said that? Francis Bacon. We left the seventh video by my reading of a letter that is in storage to do with the Pembroke family that is based at Wilton House in Wiltshire, or was at that time. Now, Queen Elizabeth was supposedly married there to Robert Leicester, and when Queen Victoria asked to see it and did, she threw it on the fire, and so it was destroyed, which was a record of the marriage taking place there. Now, this was then at the home of the third Earl of Pembroke, whom we've talked about in past videos, because he was the dedicatee of the first folio of Shakespeare plays. Now, here we have, and I would just remind the viewer, because some of you may not have watched the video 7, the first crop circle that appeared in 2024 was very close by to the Wilton House of the Pembrokes. Now, that crop circle appeared on the 12th of June 2024. And may I just remind the viewer that the 12th of June was a very, very significant date, because that date was the first of the crop circles, but also it was the opening date of the new Globe in London in 1997. That was the opening date of Sam Wanamaker's Globe, the 20-sided globe. And here I was saying in video 7 that the commemorative first folio that was published in 1996 for that opening by the Norton publishers showed the globe as 8-sided. Now, that's just a reminder, because I covered all that in video 7. But here I am now saying that that was the date of the opening of Sam Wanamaker's 20-sided globe. I could not believe it when I saw that and reminded myself of that, because I was present at that opening. And here we have a crop circle appearing on the site nearby to the Wilton House. Now, surely thus must tell the viewer what I would be thinking at that time. And I did think it. This is no accident. This is a deliberate showing of a manifestation of a crop circle nearby the village. That is where. Now, that to me said so much, because what it was really saying is that my interpretation of all that I've been saying to you was meaningful. And it was so meaningful that to me, when I recognized that date again, I had to think, somebody's trying to tell me something. And now I want to introduce 2 illustrations from the copy of my book, which I published in 2001, and it's called Kingdom for a Stage. And I'm going to draw your attention to 2 illustrations which I had created based on a drawing which is part of the construction of the drawings that I assembled from the 516 drawings. 369 is a rule for it as part of the globe design. And here you have a drawing which is based on a graph of 369 of magic squares. Well, I would call it a magic squares. And you will see that, and you will see that it's based on a frame of 72. 8 boxes or 9 boxes of 8. And it's set out as 369 through this square, and you will see the 72 as a diagonal passes from top right to bottom left. And the center stage is 72. And if you stand in the center of that stage, 72, and this happens in all kinds of buildings and can acoustically affect the audibility of what is taking place. And that is why that frame of 72 has been constructed in that way, based on the drawing of 369 of the globe. Now, I'm going to show you a second drawing which is based on that frame, which sets out the basic number symbolism of the globe. And you will see the stage, and you will see the backstage, what we call the tiring house. And you will see the exits. If you study them closely, they are 2 3s for each entrance, and there are 3, and that means the exit doors from the stage to the back of the tiring house are 666. I've mentioned the exit 666, but I should have mentioned also, and I am mentioning it now, that we have the quote, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and they have their entrances. That is sufficient for me to indicate that the back of that stage with the doors 666, that was an almost saying when we leave the stage we are going into a different concept, because these are the rooms where dressings and various other things took place. Now, symbolically, if you remember that diagram that I've just described, it is very, very symmetrical, and it's very, very numerical, and it's based on numeracy in a way that is to the dot. And the center of that stage, as depicted in that diagram, is at the point of 72. And the globe, as produced and built in 1599, that is how it should have been. I am convinced of it. However, as we well know, the successful globe as it is in London is based on 20 sides. I'm not going to make any further comment about that at the moment. However, relating it to the crop circle world as well, I have checked and have checked since I was introduced to the crop circle world, as it were, of which I knew absolutely nothing before this study. I have to say that it seems to me that it's an area that has got a particular ambience with certain features that could be related to astronomy and astrology. And as I came to investigate them crop circle by crop circle, what I did, because this is me, this is the way that I work, I wanted to know which field it was on, and I wanted to know who owned that, and wanted to know which families were connected with the sites in which they were being placed. And that's why I'm talking about the Pembroke family, because they were so busily connected with the Shakespearean story, as history talks about. Never mind me. Leave me out of it for the moment. But this crop circle that appeared at the beginning of the 2024 season was very, very significant. And now I must mention the name George Sassoon. He was the only son of Sigrid Sassoon, and they had a home in Wiltshire in the south of England. And I want to talk a little bit about this George Sassoon, because he was a very interesting character. He died in March 2006, and so this is about 20 years ago. And he wrote 3 books, and he also co-wrote The Manor Machine with Rodney Dale, and this was published in 1978. And I was really quite captured by this particular book, and from the free encyclopedia on my computer, I was able to learn the following. And I would like to quote some of that actually as I read it from my computer. Now I'm going to read actually from the quote, because I don't want to get it wrong. I want the actual reader and viewer to interpret it as I will read it. And so this manor machine then, I quote, "The machine was reproduced by Sassoon, who was an engineer," that's the book, "who followed the directions given in the Ancient of Days, and he claimed it created a food source of algae. This explains how the Israelites survived their 40-year journey in the Sinai desert. It is said by Sassoon and Dale that a, quote, nuclear reactor used to power the machine to run continuously producing manna for 6 days, and on the 7th day the machine would be taken apart for cleaning so it could run the following week. And I'm still quoting, "This is where the Sabbath, the holy day of rest, is thought to have originated." And apparently it is said by Sassoon and Dale that a nuclear reactor used to power the manna machine, was stored in the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was supposed, repeating, to have powered the machine to run continuously, producing manna for 6 days, and on the 7th day the machine would be taken apart for cleaning so it could run the following week. This is where the Sabbath, the holy day of rest, is thought to have originated. And I'm continuing with this quote. This knowledge was preserved within the Jewish Kabbalah. And when I read that, and this was comparatively recently, I'd already constructed my design for the globe. The tiring house of the globe, that is the dressing room area, is supposed to have been designed according to the proportions of the Ark of the Covenant. So there is a connection between the globe as I've interpreted it and even the manna machine as written up by George Sassoon. Now, he lived in Wiltshire, and so it's 20 years since he died, and the globe, the new globe, had already been erected according to the Wanamaker designers, 20 sides. And that was opened in 1997, and as I've already said, I was present at that opening. And here we have a connection with the Sassoon family's own interpretation according to the Kabbalah, and I think that the present globe should have been 8-sided and should have been designed according to the Kabbalistic laws of numerology. And that is what I firmly believe, and it is depicted in the Norton's reproduction of the first folio, which was reproduced before the in 1996, before the opening of the new globe in 1997, of which I was present. Now, I would like to draw the attention of the viewer to this kind of connection. Were people aware of it at the time of the rebuilding of the globe? And is this a deliberate avoidance by the designers to the Kabbalistic laws? I'm not going to comment further on that. I will move on. The new globe, the Wanamaker globe, we'll call it, had been officially opened on Thursday, the 12th of June. And yet again, I must remind the viewer that on the 12th of June, the first crop circle appeared near the Pembroke estate in Wiltshire on that same day. And now we're going to transfer our attention to another part of the story, which is associated with just a few weeks after the opening of the new globe on the 12th of June. A few weeks later, in fact on the 3rd of September, I received a package through the post, and it contained 21 pages of coded messages to me. And I was absolutely flabbergasted, because they were from, the signature was Brian Charles, the Byrom man. The man that I had visited his premises in Devonshire Buildings in Byrom. It was a flat in a tenement building. Now, there I am receiving a package from him, and this was, I last heard from him in 1993. I hadn't heard from him since 1993. And here we are in 1997, after the opening of the Globe, receiving this package. And to say that I was overwhelmed by the contents is probably understating it, because I could not believe how and why they had appeared at this time. And I would remind the viewer that on the 6th of September on that year was the funeral of Princess Diana. So she'd already died by the time I received that package. But when I was trying to understand the contents of these 21 pages that had been signed off with a letter accompanying them, signed by Brian Charles, I had already begun to wonder whether he actually was acting as a postman for somebody else. And I'm having to add that now, because I do know that he was just doing that. And between receipt of these 21 pages, I had spoken to him on the telephone. And I was fully convinced that he was, as I say, acting as the postman for somebody else. Somebody who was much closer to the building and rebuilding of the Globe itself, because there were suggestions of an inner knowledge that I'm going to talk about in a minute, from some of the contents of those 21 pages. At the same time, a book was published entitled Sounds from Another Room by somebody called Peter Horsley, and that was published on the 5th of September. So I had the package delivered to me on the 3rd of September. This book was published on the 5th of September, and then, sadly for all of us that was in sympathy with the royal family, Princess Diana's funeral was on the 6th of September. So those 3 dates, the 3rd and the 5th and the 6th, were weighed very, very heavily on me for one reason or another. And I'm mentioning this book now because it contained connections with the 21 pages that I had received on the 3rd. One of the illustrations of the 21 pages was entitled Power to the People versus Power to the People. And I'm going to show that illustration as it appeared on that page. Now, why am I drawing it to your attention now because the Peter Horsley that was the author of this book was an equerry to the then Princess, the Queen, Elizabeth II, and the Prince Philip. And he was an equerry to them and had been for some time. And there he is writing this book, which was a biography of some part of his life in particular. And this is why I'm talking about it now. Because one of the illustrations that was contained in the 21 pages, which I will remind arrived on the 5th of September, on the 3rd of September, and this book was published on the 5th of September, contained a scenario which I'm going to talk about, which was a feature of this book. And the illustration that I'm showing you was signed by Janus. And I will remind the viewer, the heading of it was Power to the People versus Power to the People. And you will see from the description, as shown on the screen to you, that he was described as a scout. Now, the name Janus, as we will probably be aware, stands for two-headed, facing both sides. Now, there was in this particular book a whole section which was about Janus. And this book was published, as I say, on the 5th of September, after I'd received the package on the 3rd. And I am suggesting that the author of the 21 pages knew about this book before it was published. And who was Janus then? Now, according to the book, there was a request for Peter Horsley to visit a Mrs. Markham who lived in Chelsea. He went to meet Mrs. Markham in Chelsea, and he was on inviting him into the home. He was introduced to the only guest who was present at that time, and that person was introduced to Peter Horsley as Janus. And there then followed almost a monologue from Janus, because Peter Horsley wanted to know why he needed, it was Mrs. Markham that had invited him to her home, but it was in order to meet Janus. And when Peter Horsley requested why it was necessary for him to meet this man, he said, "I want you to arrange a meeting with the Duke of Edinburgh." And Peter Horsley was taken aback, I believe, and then there followed almost a monologue from Janus, who wanted to explain and did explain why he wanted to meet the Duke of Edinburgh. And I'm not going to go into the detail of it, except to say that Janus was an alien, and he wanted to meet the Duke of Edinburgh because he knew that the Duke of Edinburgh was very, very interested, as with a group of other like-minded people of his friendship and relationship. I'm talking about the Duke of Edinburgh. Duke of Edinburgh used to have meetings about UFOs and alien life. And Janus wanted to convey to the Duke of Edinburgh the dangers that modern society were facing if they ignored certain practicalities in their technology. And this apparently interview had taken place with Mrs. Markham in 1954. And Peter Horsley was writing about it in a book published in 1997. The rest of the 21 pages, I'm going to demonstrate and have on view one or two of the other illustrations from that package. But it seemed to me as though there was some connection with the real writer of these 21 pages, which I considered the Brian Charles to be the postman for. And I had already decided, for reasons that I am not going to disclose fully, because there are other people living that are implicated with that. But I knew that the artistic directors group the chairman of it had been Michael Birkett, the Lord of Ulverston. And Ulverston is cheek by jowl to Barrow, and I knew that Lord Michael Birkett had got very, very close associations with that area. And I believed that he had connections with Brian Charles also. There are reasons that I say this with absolute confidence, and therefore Michael Birkett, Sir Michael Birkett, who was a very close advisor to Sam Wanamaker and was the chairman of the artistic board at that time, I think that he was the real pen behind the 21 pages, and that Brian Charles was his postman. Now, Peter Horsley, as I say, that was the author of this book, published on the 5th of September 1997. It was published by Leo Cooper of the Pen and Sword Books Limited. And where was it printed? In Trowbridge, Wiltshire, which is the bedrock of a lot of the formulas to do with the crop circles that have appeared over the years. Now, as it so happens, I've had this book for a long time because I had associated, and it had been drawn to my attention by the dates when it was published and by the signature of Janus, and also the connections with all kinds of connections. I'd associated it with my work and had bought it. As it so happens, since I've been making these videos, and only only during those months, my attention was drawn to the fact that a film has been reintroduced onto YouTube, which is entitled British UFO Files, a full UFO documentary, and I'm quoting the title, Unseen Footage. And that is a recent reproduction of this particular film that had been made earlier with a limited access to it. And what does it feature? This book that I'm describing and this story of Janus. Now, I have no association and connection with that. I have noted it, but I had already had the 21 pages sent to me in 1997, in which one of them was featuring Janus. Now, to me, there are other features to do with this book, which it's not for me to talk about really, because it's not connected with the main topics of these videos. But it is quite certain that because of the modern technology and what is happening in the world as we speak, there is a fresh and new and renewed interest in the whole world of UFOs and alien life. And I have to say that Janus, who wanted to meet the Duke of Edinburgh, he was very au fait with a group that he used to meet about this topic. And then those of you that has been watching these videos will notice that in The Messenger, my last book, I do feature the 9th of April. That is not associated with the dates that I'm talking about now, but the 9th of April is a very, very significant date in the whole of my thesis. And the 3rd Earl of Pembroke, I'm reminding the viewer again of the video that appeared, the first video, the first crop circle that appeared in 2024, was nearby the estate of the 3rd Earl of Pembroke, who himself died on the 9th of April, celebrating his 50th birthday. And also Francis Bacon, whose contrived death was on the 9th of April. And what am I mentioning now? The Duke of Edinburgh died on the 9th of April, 2021. Now, it may be that this is a good story for some, and it may be that people will see it as a story, a set of coincidences, if you like. And that is all right. That is for the viewer to decide. I will remind you that the American messenger was the person who telephoned me and asked me if there had been any crop circles appearing in 2024, and within a few days the one that appeared on the 12th of June appeared within days of that phone call. He'd first contacted me in 2016, having watched the film that I made with Bruce Burgess for Forbidden History. He'd seen it in America, but he'd seen it not in 2013, but in 2016, when it had been shown in America. I was not aware of that. However, since then, we have, since 2019, we have been corresponding, and we had been corresponding, and he had decided that he wanted to make a visit to me here in Manchester to discuss my interpretations of the geometry and philosophy associated with them. And it was in the middle of COVID. We were all having to indulge in limited friendships and appearances and associations at that time. And we were not telephoning each other much at that time, but I did have a second phone call with him about a proposed visit that he wanted to make to me during that period. And I had had my attention drawn by that time by others to crop circles, and I had been completely ignorant, and I'm saying this opening to that kind of discipline. I had not been following them at all, but I was advised by others that I should begin to look at them. And in doing so, by that time I had received from Carpenter the 9 windows, and by being attracted to the crop circle syndrome, I had noticed that one of them was in one of the windows. They were very similar to a crop circle and my geometry. And so during this agreed conversation that we were to have about a proposed visit, I asked him whether he had any connections with the crop circles. And he hesitated and answered very correctly and precisely, but then later that day he sent me an email to clarify his position about crop circles. And as a closing issue to this video, I'm going to read part of that video, that conversation that we had on the telephone, followed by the email that he sent me the same day. And in doing so, what I did decide to include it in my book, The Messenger. And when he visited, I gave him the opportunity to read that as he had sent it. And I said to him, if you'd like to change it because you were teasing me, or it wasn't true, or you want to modify it, or you want to alter it, if you want me to leave it out, please say so now. And I am going to read it to you, a section of it, because this is what he said to me in his email. And I'm reading it from the entry of the book itself, because having asked him if he wanted to change it, he said, no, I can't. No, I can't change that. And I said to him at the time, well, if I include it, I'm including it as you have said it, and you are accountable for what you've said. And that is what I said. And so I'm now going to read you the important section of it. I'm not going to read it all, but this is word for word as included in my book, The Messenger. Quote, they have spoken to me, and now they speak to you, as you know. I am an emissary, as I have said, a fledgling blue in the world of aliens. I had to learn galactic, and to you they speak in symbolic logic right down your geometrical alley. To top it all off, they know exactly what to say at exactly the right time, in exactly the right place for you to take notice. You've noticed it yourself. To know that you personally are being directly addressed by a real life alien race. Unquote. Who is this carpenter speaking from across the pond in the United States? I cannot speak for him, but I can quote him as I have. With all that engenders artificial intelligence, make of it what you will. I quote that because was this he, through the alien race, alerting me to the first crop circle that appeared in 2024. It was so much connected with my work. I believe it was. And who is he then? Make of it what you will.